The dojo went silent the instant the black belt grabbed the young woman by the arm. Her training bag dropped to the floor, and every conversation stopped. She tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip, laughing as if the entire room belonged to him. Then, from the back corner, a quiet older man slowly stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He simply looked at the black belt and asked one question. The question was so calm that it somehow sounded more dangerous than a threat. Nobody in the dojo knew that the quiet man had spent years serving in dangerous places where discipline wasn't about trophies or applause. He was a veteran who had learned that the most important moment in a fight was often the moment before you decided to fight. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for people who cannot always stand up for themselves, please like this video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to Dad's Soul Diaries. Your support helps these stories reach people who still believe that courage can be gentle. The quiet veteran was named Gideon Cross, a 50-year-old widower who lived alone in a small house near the edge of the city. He had once been a highly trained military rescue specialist, but those days were long behind him. Now he spent his mornings repairing old furniture, helping neighbors with small jobs, and drinking coffee at the same little diner every afternoon. Gideon rarely talked about his service. He didn't display medals on his walls. He didn't wear military clothing. He didn't tell war stories at parties. To most people, he was simply an older man with silver hair, tired eyes, and a calm voice. But Gideon carried memories that never completely disappeared. He had seen people panic. He had seen brave people become frightened. He had seen men with enormous physical strength collapse under pressure. And he had learned something that took years to understand. Real courage wasn't loud. It didn't need an audience. That was why Gideon had started visiting the dojo. Not to train. Not to compete. He went there because his 17-year-old granddaughter, Seraphina, had recently joined a beginner self-defense class. After losing her parents in a tragic highway accident, Seraphina had been struggling with confidence. She often avoided crowds and became nervous around aggressive people. Gideon wanted her to learn that she had the right to protect herself and the right to walk away. The dojo belonged to a respected instructor named Mateo Vance, who had spent more than 30 years teaching martial arts. Mateo was strict but fair. He constantly reminded his students that martial arts was supposed to build discipline, not arrogance. Unfortunately, one of his best students had forgotten that lesson. His name was Brayden Holt. Brayden was 27 and held a prestigious black belt. He had won several competitions and enjoyed the attention that came with being considered one of the strongest fighters in the academy. Younger students admired him. Some were afraid of him. Brayden liked both reactions. He had a habit of teasing beginners. If someone made a mistake, he laughed. If someone couldn't keep up, he mocked them. And if anyone questioned him, he reminded them of his championship trophies. Seraphina had never liked him. She tried to avoid him whenever possible. For several weeks, she succeeded. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Seraphina was finishing her training session when Brayden walked across the mat. She was packing her gloves into her bag when he told her that her stance was terrible. She politely thanked him and said she was still learning. Brayden laughed. He stepped closer. He told her that if she was going to train in a real dojo, she needed to stop acting scared. Seraphina tried to walk away. Brayden grabbed her wrist. She immediately pulled back. He didn't let go. Several students noticed. Mateo was speaking with another instructor on the other side of the room. Seraphina told Brayden to release her. He laughed again. Then he tightened his grip. That was when Gideon stood up. He didn't move quickly. He didn't need to. The entire room seemed to feel the change in atmosphere. Gideon walked toward them. Brayden looked at the older man and told him to mind his own business. Gideon stopped several feet away. His eyes remained fixed on Brayden's hand. Then he asked one question. He asked whether Brayden's instructor had ever taught him the difference between control and intimidation. Brayden stared at him. For a second, nobody moved. Then Brayden released Seraphina. She immediately stepped backward. Gideon looked at her and asked whether she was hurt. She shook her head. Gideon nodded. Then he turned back toward Brayden. Brayden tried to laugh it off. He said the older man was acting like some kind of hero. Gideon simply asked him another question. He asked whether Brayden knew what happened when someone stopped controlling their temper. Brayden became irritated. He stepped toward Gideon. Mateo finally noticed what was happening and hurried across the dojo. He ordered Brayden to stop. Brayden ignored him. He told Gideon that if he wanted to lecture fighters, he should at least prove he knew what he was talking about. Gideon said he had nothing to prove. That answer made Brayden furious. He challenged Gideon to spar. The room became silent again. Gideon refused. Brayden mocked him. He called him an old man. He asked whether Gideon was afraid. Gideon looked toward Seraphina. She was standing near the wall, frightened and embarrassed. Gideon finally stepped onto the mat. He told Brayden they would spar for 30 seconds. Nothing more. Mateo looked concerned. He knew something about Gideon that most people didn't. Several years earlier, Gideon had helped Mateo during a community emergency. Mateo had never asked about his military background, but he had noticed the man's unusual awareness and controlled movement. Brayden bowed casually. Gideon bowed respectfully. The timer started. Brayden attacked first. He moved quickly, throwing a controlled punch toward Gideon's shoulder. Gideon stepped aside. Brayden tried again. Gideon moved backward. The students began whispering. Brayden attacked faster. Gideon continued avoiding him. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look nervous. He looked like someone watching rain fall. Brayden suddenly attempted a takedown. Gideon shifted his weight. Brayden missed. Gideon placed one hand lightly against his shoulder and redirected him. Brayden stumbled across the mat. The timer stopped. 30 seconds. Gideon stepped away. Brayden was stunned. He had thrown several attacks. None had landed. Gideon hadn't thrown a single strike. Brayden demanded another round. Gideon refused. Brayden accused him of being afraid. Gideon looked at him and said that if he were afraid, he would have left the room. Then he said something that nobody expected. He told Brayden that he wasn't trying to defeat him. He was trying to prevent him from becoming the kind of man who needed to hurt people to feel powerful. The word struck the room with unusual force. Brayden became quiet. Mateo walked toward Gideon. He asked whether he had served. Gideon hesitated. Then he nodded. Mateo asked what kind of service. Gideon finally admitted that he had spent more than 20 years in military rescue operations. He had entered disaster zones. He had helped evacuate injured civilians. He had pulled people from collapsed buildings. He had worked alongside teams where every movement had to be precise because a mistake could cost someone's life. And during one mission, Gideon had watched his closest friend die while trying to save a trapped family. That experience changed him. After returning home, Gideon realized he no longer wanted recognition. He didn't want people calling him a hero. He wanted a quiet life. He wanted to help his granddaughter grow up without being defined by tragedy. That was why he had never mentioned his past. Seraphina looked at him differently. She had always known Gideon was strong. She had simply never understood why. Now she realized his strength wasn't about being able to fight. It was about knowing when not to. Brayden stood silently. His face had changed. The arrogance was gone. He looked at Seraphina and apologized. Then he apologized to Gideon. Gideon accepted the apology. But he told Brayden that saying sorry was only the beginning. The real test would be what Brayden did afterward. For the first time, Brayden understood. He had spent years believing martial arts gave him power over other people. Gideon had shown him that martial arts was supposed to give him power over himself. Over the next several weeks, Brayden changed. At first, people didn't believe it. Then they noticed him helping beginners. He stopped mocking mistakes. He started encouraging younger students. When someone struggled, he showed patience. Mateo watched the transformation quietly. One evening, he told Brayden that he had finally begun earning the meaning behind his black belt. Brayden asked whether Gideon had taught him. Mateo said Gideon had only asked a question. Brayden smiled. Sometimes one question was enough. Months later, Seraphina completed her beginner self-defense course. At the small ceremony, Mateo handed her a certificate. She looked toward Gideon. He was standing in the back of the room, clapping quietly. Seraphina walked toward him and hugged him. She told him she wasn't afraid anymore. Gideon smiled. He told her that fear might always visit her. The goal wasn't to never feel fear. The goal was to decide what she would do when fear arrived. She nodded. Then she asked him whether he missed his old military life. Gideon looked toward the window. He said he missed the people. He missed the friendships. But he didn't miss the danger. He said that after spending years helping people survive terrible moments, he had learned to appreciate ordinary days. A cup of coffee. A quiet house. A granddaughter laughing. A safe drive home. Those things were treasures. Brayden eventually became one of Seraphina's training partners. He treated her with respect. One afternoon, another beginner accidentally knocked him down during practice. Everyone expected Brayden to become angry. Instead, he laughed and helped the beginner back to his feet. Gideon watched from the corner. Mateo looked at him. Neither man said anything. They didn't need to.